All you need to do is look back at what has been said here. You will find nothing that you can disown or disprove. All that has been said is something that you have to see as it is. We are not proposing anything speculative. We are not making a promise. We say that you are an akrata, that you are avinashi, indestructible. How can such a person perform any action, there being no action really? There are two types of negation. One is a physical negation, nisada, and the other is bada, negation of knowledge. The katrutva buddhi is here and it is negated. You may see the same person performing an action, talking for example, and at the same time saying that Atma is Akrita, and so on. You could say that Krishna was talking and was therefore a karta. Arjuna could have said to Krishna, "You are performing the action of talking to me. How then can you tell me that Atma is Akrita?" To say the one who knows Atma does not perform any action means that you do not know Atma. Krishna was definitely performing actions. For one thing, he was driving Arjuna's chariot. That does not make him a Ajnani, and if he is an Ajnani, what does he have to teach? This kind of question arises only because Atma is not understood. When you see the sun rise, you enjoy it and negate it also, because you know that the sun does not actually rise. There is a conclusion that the sun rises, and because you see it rising, you say that the conclusion is true. You perceive it. Therefore, the sun rises in the eastern sky. By further knowledge, however, you understand the whole process of why the sun appears as though it is rising. The sun rising becomes only an appearance, and therefore is not a real rising, is that there is no real action of rising on the part of the sun. Thus, seeing the sun rise, you negate it, knowing that it does not rise at all. This is negation or by bada, knowledge, you see and still you negate. Similarly, you see a variety of colors in a peacock's feather, but there are no such colors in fact. The appearance of color is due to different prism-like structures that reflect light in a particular manner. This is purely bada, negation by knowledge. It does not mean that you are negating the perception of color, only that you are negating color being there. In fact, all science is purely bada. It goes on negating. It sees something and then finds that it is not true and that something else is true instead. When you go after the substance of a given substance, what was previously considered to be the substance is found to have no substance because it has to depend on other substance for its existence. In this way, we find that any substantive loses its substance and still continues to exist. Although you have negated this existence, you may even use it. Bada is a kind of negation that is done by everyone. A physicist will say that gold is nothing but some quanta of energy. Copper is also some quanta of energy. However, this does not mean that he will give his fiancée a copper engagement ring. Buying a gold ring does not in any way alter his knowledge that both gold and copper are but energy. This is also bada, negation. Seeing it, you negate it. Bada then is a different type of negation, and that is how the Katrutva Buddhi in the Atma is negated. Bada is not a simple negation. Once Bada is therefore, regardless of what the Jnani does, he or she knows that I perform no action. This is jnana, knowledge, and there is no way of losing it. This is what we call sarva karma sannyasi. It does not mean that a person will not do any action. It means that the Sachita Ananda Atma does not perform any action. Want me to continue or somebody's gonna do it?
Yeah, you can do this in the next two paragraphs as well, please.
Okay. There is nothing more to be done. While performing karma, the Sarva Karma Sannyasi sees that there is freedom from action. In action, one sees actionlessness. The one who knows this is called Buddhiman. Such a person has the knowledge, buddhi, and has done everything that has to be done. Krishna karma, karma kart. Because one knows that Atma is karta, purna, always full. Shankara spends a lot of time here quoting from later verses because of the importance of these two sentences. He said that it would be shown that the one who has Atmagnani, self-knowledge alone is qualified for Sarva Karma Sannyasa. Such a person is not bound anymore by karma. Therefore, whatever a Sarva Karma Sannyasi does, he or she does not only because it has to be done and not because of any desired result. Because of the person's prarabdha karma, certain actions may be performed. This will be seen repeatedly throughout the Gita Shastra. What is relevant here is the initial conclusion that Atma is not subject to any change or destruction.
We'll just spend a couple minutes here understanding the gist of what is being taught about, like whether we call it the nisheda or badha. Let's ignore all of that. The gist of it is that we Atma does not perform action, and as an Atma bound by this body, mind, and sense complex, there are scenarios that are getting presented to me based on my prarabdha, and how I do those actions is what matters. How when I say I, the difference is like there is a scenario that's getting presented. Therefore, I'll do what is my dharma, and I'll forth the dharma first before my own interests, my self interests, and do what is to be done. And I don't expect a return, and I will leave it like with the Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. I'll just do my actions, and with Ishvara Prasada Buddhi, I accept all the results thereof. And knowing that none of this is touching my Atma, I live in the Atmanyeva Atmana Tushtaha, that will come ahead of us, 255. So, where I am able to differentiate between these two. So, it's not actionlessness, is not about leaving all the actions, because there is no way we can sustain a life without doing actions, but it is about the knowledge that as the Atma, I am not the Karta and I'm not the Bhokta. And as a Jivatman, an Atman bound by this Jiva, I'm going to perform the actions. So that is the whole gist of it. And look, and somebody shared, I think Anuji shared this quote. I actually saved it because that's the gist of Gita. And that's the gist of, when I say Gita, Gita itself is the gist of all the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras. And the simple three things, and I'm going to just quote: give up these three thoughts while doing any activity. It's mine, I am the doer, and the fruit of action is for me. And you will be untouched by karma. So what are we saying? It's we shouldn't say it's mine, because there is nothing that belongs to me. I am the doer, because I'm the akarta, and the fruit of action is for me, or there is an expectation of a certain fruit of action. Then that is the abhokta part. That's it. Like these three things are the prime knowledge that is being provided to us. With that, we'll move into Shloka 22, unless anybody has any thoughts that they want to share. Okay. Who would like to chant this Shloka with me? I heard Anuji first. Anuji, would you like to?
Yes. Would you say and I repeat, or?
Yeah, I think I'll do it first, or if you want to go ahead, go for it too, if you're pretty comfortable. Just want to note that this is Trishtup Chandas, so it has the 11 syllables per quartlet.
Okay.
Go ahead, Anuji.
वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान् यन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि.
Just minor changes.
Okay.
Grihnati is the word. I know, we are used to saying grihnati, and it's like Brahma, right? Like when we write BRAHMA, but we say MHA. It's one of those words. So
Okay.
Navagrinhati Naroparani. And
Okay.
Jirnani is where it stops. Tatha Sharirani Vihaya Jirnani Anyani Samyati Navani Dehi.
Okay. वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णानि अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि.
Perfect. Very well done.
Nara, a person, yatha, just as, jirnani, old, vasamsi, clothes, vihaya, giving up, aparani, others, navani, new, grinhati, takes, tata, so too, dehi, the indweller of the body, jirnani, old, sharirani, bodies, vihaya, giving up, anyani, others, navani, new, samyati, takes. Just as a person gives up old clothes and takes up new ones, so does the self, the one who dwells in the body, gives up old bodies and takes others, which are new. Nara means a human being, or etymologically, one who cannot be destroyed, one who always survives somehow. If a person is enlightened, he or she survives eternally as eternal Brahman. If not, the person merely survives. How? The word yata, meaning just as, indicates that an illustration is about to be. The illustration used is the discarding of old clothes for new or better ones. Vasamsi jirnani vihaya aparani navani grinhati. Similarly, the old body, Sharira, is given up and a new one is taken. Sharira means that which is subject to disintegration. Bodies therefore become useless in time because of the natural aging process, disease, or abuse. The abuse may be caused by someone's wrong action, like murder, for instance, or by your own abuse, by slow suicide, like drinking, and so on. A person destroys the body and thus it is rendered old and useless, jirna. You are the one wearing the clothes and you keep on wearing them on this sharira. They are with you only as long as you find them useful, and when they are useless, you throw them away and take on new clothes. This process is repeated again and again. Similarly, there is a wearer of this body who is the indweller of it. The Dehi, indweller, is the one who has a Deha, body. Just as the body is within the clothes, so too the within this body, which is itself a costume, is the person, the indweller, Mr., Mrs., and Miss so and so, who takes new bodies, anyani, navani, samyati, giving up the old, one takes on the new. The idea here is that either way, Atma is Nitya. It does not die. It always keeps on going. Even when the jivatva dies, the jiva does not die, only the notion dies. Krishna wants to point out here that Atma is always Nitya. Never does the Atma subject itself to disappearance. The Dehi, the indweller, continues to be. Here, certain questions can be asked. When a person is really old, the body is no longer useful. A man, for example, may be 98 years old and unable to hear, see, walk, or do anything. He cannot digest his food or even open his mouth, and even if he can, he has no teeth. Such a body is definitely useless, like an old Cadillac. The only difference is that certain parts are salvaged from the Cadillac, whereas the old body has nothing to donate. Everything is so old and worn out that to receive a donation from such a person, one would need to be at least 150 years old. Because this old body is no longer useful, the person gives it up. That he lets it go and takes a new body is understandable. Just as giving up of old clothes and taking on to new ones is understandable. However, the example does not seem to hold in all cases, given that we see people dying away in the prime of youth with cancer and so on. We can understand that accidents are due to someone's mistake, carelessness, or whatever. Someone dying because of a homicide is also understandable in that another person abused his or her free will by performing a destructive action against body which can be objectified by others. For example, a bullet can destroy the stula sharira, physical body, and once ruptured, the sukshma sharira, subtle body, can no longer live in it. Just as a car needs a few things with which to operate, spark plugs, and so on, so too there is a minimum requirement for the Sukshma Sharira to be able to operate within the physical body. For instance, there must be a heart and kidney. If these are ruptured, the body is useless regardless of its age. Just as a new car you bought yesterday can become a wreck today, so too this body can also be wrecked. And because the Dehi can no longer run it, a new body has to be found. Do I continue?
Yeah, if you could please. There are
Okay.
3 more paragraphs according to my PDF.
Okay. However, when a young person dies of leukemia or due to some unknown reason, we cannot say that he or she did anything wrong to bring about this disease. The person may have done one or two things wrong, but nothing sufficient to develop cancer. Crib death is but one of the many ways a child may die. People are also struck down in youth and middle age in any number of ways. Energetic, ambitious people with a lot of plans and many irons in the fire do succumb to heart attacks. Why do people die away like this when the body is not yet worn out? The answer to these questions is as follows. What is said is that the death of the physical body depends on the Dehi. If the Jiva has taken this body and is a survivor of death, then there must be some cause which has brought this body into being. If you accept that there is a Dehi other than this body who survives death, then that Dehi, having survived not only this death but also the previous ones, is always a survivor. The Dehi then must have come to this body because of his or her own karma, not because of God's will or for any other reason. A God who willed suffering to people would be some kind of a tyrant, a sadist, and would definitely require psychological treatment. Why else would he put so much sadness into people? One person is born with leprosy, another with syphilis, AIDS, and what not for no fault of the person. What kind of God would sit there and give people such sadness from the very start? Not only for the growing child, but for everyone around as well, since seeing such suffering is a sickness in itself. Anyone who is responsible for doing such things is a sadist and is the first one who should be brought to justice. We could never sing in praise of such a Lord.
Awesome.
Only, okay, thank you.
There is, shall we continue on? Like, and then probably towards the end of the shloka, we'll stop. Does anybody else want to read from here?
Can read. Shriji, I had a question.
Sure, go ahead, Arpita.
Shriji, what about people who, like, when they donate a body part or they donate their body, does Hinduism say anything against it or for it?
No, it doesn't. And it is like we categorize body into 3, right?
Yeah.
The Sthula Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira, and the Karana Sharira, causal body. And
Yeah.
beyond all of this is the Atma. So what we are donating is the Sthula Sharira part. And if that is being useful for somebody else, Paropakarartham idam shariram is what we say, right? And if it is being used, there is nothing that I at least know or learned from my gurus that there is nothing against it. What carries the karmas forward is the Sukshma Sharira. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Can I start?
Please go ahead, Anitaji.
God is not a tyrant. Only a sadistic God could be a tyrant, enjoying the suffering of people for no reason. Some are born with wooden spoons in their mouths, others with silver and golden spoons, and some are born with no mouth at all. What kind of God would do this? Some are born to become orphans. Why then are they even born? Don't ask. We are usually told. This is what is called double justification. God is first justified by what he does and then we are told not to question his actions. Why even talk about such a God then? Let us settle our account with ourselves. We have our own lot. You have a body here which has its own problems. You do not require God at all for this, and if there is such a tyrant, it is better not to think of him at all. On the other hand, perhaps the explanation is that we have asked for our particular lot in life. God is the law. We asked for it and we got it. The Lord says, I'm the one who made you, and at the same time, I have not made you. This is likely putting your finger into the fire and then asking the fire, "Did you burn me?" "Yes, I burned you," says the fire. "Why?" "I didn't burn you at all. You just told me you burned me, and then you say you didn't. How can you say both? You're blowing hot and cold. I thought you blew only hot, and now I find you blow both hot and cold. Why is that? When you stuck your finger into me, I burned. To burn is my nature, my svabhava, and I burned. I cannot say that someone else burned. I burned your finger, but then I did not go after your finger, did I? I remained in my place. You stuck your finger into me and got burned. In other words, you asked for it. This is the law and is what is meant by the law of karma, prarabdha karma. It is the jiva's karma, the law of karma being there. If you accept a soul that survives the body, then you definitely have to account for the varieties of situations that you face. Thus, prarabdha karma is the reason why a person, a dehi, comes with a particular deha, which dies when the job is done. What is it that is new? With reference to taking on a new body, who is to decide what is new? Car rental people always buy new cars and after 1 year sell them. For them, 1 year old car is old, but not the one who buys it thinks of it as new. Others may buy a much older car and also think of it as new, whereas the seller thinks of it as old. Of course, there are even they are even old, but the one who buys it thinks of it as new. Others may buy a much older car and also think of it as new, whereas the seller thinks of it as old. Of course, there are even others who buy very old cars, fix them up, and very happy that they have the oldest car available because it is a valuable antique. Who then is to decide which of these is new? Similarly, the king of Tiruvananthapuram in the south of India must walk to the temple every day wearing new clothes. The clothes he wears one day are considered old the next day and are given away. Of course, the one who receives the clothes thinks of them as new. This person may wear them for a year or two and then also think they are old. There's always someone who will take them. That is why it is said that there is a buyer for everything. You have to decide what is new. Similarly, here, what is old or new has to be decided by the Dehi and not by you, the onlooker. For the onlooker, the body may not be ready for death, but for the Dehi, the job is done. Those who are bereaved may look at a particular death as something that is premature, but this is not the case from the standpoint of the Dehi. Unless the death is caused by some wrong action, that is the abuse of free will on the part of oneself or someone else. Otherwise, it is for the Dehi to decide when the body's job is done. In other words, when the purpose for which the body was taken has been accomplished. Even though the Dehi may like to live on, the job for which his body was taken is done. When it is done, the tenure is over. Whatever had to happen here has already happened. Therefore, death takes place. Just as in the world, a person takes on new clothes and gives up the old ones, so too the one who indwells in the body, the jiva, gives up the old body and takes on the new. What is meant by old bodies is to be understood properly. Therefore, for the Dehi, the one who indwells the Deha, there is no death at all, and for the Deha, there is no survival. The body is bound by time, subject to change, and it keeps changing all the time. There is no time when the body does not change. Because it's always changing, it is called Sharira or Deha. Deha means that which is subject to cremation, and Sharira means that which is subject to disintegration, that which is buried. The choice then is only between these two. The Deha is always subject to death and is always dying. It is not that suddenly one fine day it dies. Rather, it keeps on dying all the time. You cannot stop it. Whereas in the case of Dehi, you cannot destroy it. Both facts must be seen clearly. This being so, there is no cause for grief, asocianya, Anvasochan, a theme that continues and is the conclusion. That there is no cause for grief is the vision of the Shastra, and being so has a bearing upon the entire dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. As we proceed, we shall see that there are topical connections, sectional connections, and a total connection with this theme throughout the Gita.
Awesome. So we'll just take a couple seconds to recap. So we are saying there are two things. One is the dehi or the shariri, and there is the sharira or the deha. And we've been using the terms the body, mind, sense complex, which constitutes the sukshma shariram, the stula shariram, and don't take karana shariram into it, but the stula, the sukshma shariras. And the dehi is the atman. So the dehi will not die no matter what, and the deha cannot survive forever. So there are distinct aspects that need to that will be separated but connected in a different way. And the example that we can take, think about it as there is a building and the building was demolished and there is a large complex that was constructed in that same area, in that same plot. The space hasn't moved anywhere. It was the same space, it stays in the same place, it doesn't move here and there because it's just like space. And we've been taking this example of the Ghatakasha and Patakasha and all of that, where space has occupied the whole universe and will not be able to move any further. And of course, in the case of space, it's expanding further. But so that is not changing. What's changing is what surrounds it at any given point of time. At this point, it could be a pot, and in the next minute, that could be replaced by a vase or something else. But the space doesn't change. Similarly, whatever the Sukshma Shariram and the Sthula Shariram have been made up of, those, if you want to take it from like atoms and molecules standpoint, all of those have to disintegrate and have to become something else and transform into something else. The Dehi is not going to change and it will not affect the Dehi. And there was some note on the prarabdha and why some children die and some people die prematurely. And we talk about this very frequently on the closest of the relationships, right? There must be some connection between a certain family members or who we make friends with or who we work with, who our colleagues are or neighbors are. There are some connections somewhere. So therefore, there is a karma lampatam is what we call it in Telugu, where there is some connection somewhere in the previous karmas, and we come here to get rid of those. And in the process, we actually collect more baggage, which is again like the hamster wheel will go in circles. So as soon as those activities are completed and we have come up with a clean slate, then there is no purpose for the Dehi or the Deha to remain in this world. And there ends that story. It's like a movie. There is a role that this person is playing, and the role is completed. As soon as that's done, he walks out of the green room and has no connection with the role that he was playing. Any thoughts anybody wants to share, or shall we move to Shloka 13?
So this is all very clear, CG. But can we go back and look at where they talk about why some people are born poor or rich and how they compare that to the fire? So I'm trying to understand that.
Oh,
I think even I think there's some on the page before this too. Some about the fire. Yeah.
and you have to remind me where that is. Sorry.
So yeah, I think this is the continuation. So how how do you some people question why some people are born with everything and some people are not, and then the explanation for that, I think it's I mean, you're on the right page. Maybe it's on the next page. Like the explanation is on the next page, maybe.
This one?
Yeah.
Would you, would you like to read it? Reread
Yeah.
it?
I can read it, but so I think so here it says the Lord says, so So on the other hand, perhaps the explanation is that we have asked for our particular lot in life. God is the law. We asked for it and we got it. The Lord says, I'm the one who made you, and at the same time, I have not made you. And I think they compare that to the fire on the next page.
Correct.
So, yes. So this is like putting your finger in the fire. And then asking the fire, did you burn me? Yes, I burned you, says the fire. Why? I didn't burn you at all. You just told me you burned me, and then you say you did not. How can you say you both? You are blowing hot and cold. I thought you blew only hot, and now I find you blow both hot and cold. Why is that? So I'm not able to understand I guess the comparison, and even really understand the depth of why people like why some are certain way and the others certain way.
So a couple things happen, right? Like, and we were recently talking about it. The law of karma has two facets to it.
Mm-hmm.
One is what has already been done, and there is a result that is about to come, that will ensue.
Mm-hmm.
And how am I going to react to what is today? So my future, my tomorrow is going to be built on what's going to happen today.
Mm-hmm.
And in Yoga Vasishtam, Vasishta Maharshi speaks to Rama, and where Rama questions actually, he says, between prarabdha and the power of action, the free will, which is more powerful? And he says, Vasishta says, there's some background noise. And Vasishta says, think about it as two rams are fighting,
Mm-hmm.
and which one will win? And Rama says, whichever is stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And Vasishta says, exactly. So there is prarabdha, which we know is going to be strong, but how much or how much more do you have to be powerful, or your self-effort has to be more powerful than what that prarabdha is? And based on that, the result will be declared. The more powerful will help. And of course, in that, when you are trying to make yourself stronger than the prarabdha, the power of bhakti, the power of sharanagati, the power of pujas, and all of that will come into picture to make that person stronger, is how Vasishta explains. So here we are talking about the hot and cold is the sukha dukkha in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Right.
and we are burning ourselves, because Bhagavan doesn't say, I'm going to give you this. He is not sitting there with a stick and say, okay, if you do the mistake, I'm going to hit you.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a tyrant. He's not deciding anything.
Right.
He's just a sakshi, and he's watching everybody go through these cycles
Mm-hmm.
and just monitoring it.
Mm-hmm.
The law of karma, as we previously read in previous classes, that it is being defined by him. It has been defined by him, but it auto computes. He is not sitting there and making notes. This person on this day did this. He doesn't have to do that. It's an algorithm that has been defined by him, and it runs on its own.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, depending on how we put our fingers into the fire, and we expect that, oh, like, I did this karma, and I did not think about what are the repercussions for it, but then I would like to, like, I would like some cool air blow on my finger, but that wouldn't happen because you did not think about the repercussions in the past. It's very simple, basic, like, law that we can think about, like, you give this and you get this in return. That's it, right?
Right.
But when you're getting this in return, how you take it and how we act on that particular scenario, that is what is going to make a difference in what we will get tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That we should not forget.
Okay.
And
Yes.
my son asked me a question,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not convinced with the answer yet, so he keeps discussing that with me whenever he gets a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Because and especially, like, it happens to me very often. I don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
And even if out of embarrassment, I did say something to my colleagues, actually. Did a very stupid thing and broke a bone, had a hairline fracture. And I was talking to my team in the office, and they asked me, and I said, I fell and I hit myself. And I was telling my husband, I called him, I said, that just made me ridiculous, because I could have told him what I did and how I broke it, or and be embarrassed, or I could say this and feel guilty that I actually said something that did not happen. And I was laughing. I actually went to an emergency clinic and I got something for it. And I was walking out into the parking lot and I fell. Exactly on the same spot, I broke it again.
Oh my God.
And I was telling my husband, I know that would happen. As soon as I said that, I had this guilty feeling, and therefore, the result is like within half an hour, I see the result. So my son laughs at me and he says, "Mom, you say that," and we try to live this contained and the dharmic life. What about those people who are corrupt and in billions of dollars they take bribes, and in India we talk about especially laksha kotu, 100,000 crores of corruption. He says they seem to be happy. So they why are not should they not be blown up at that moment? Why are they just seem to be fine? And I tell him they're so corrupt that it would not happen in this lifetime. It would go into the next lifetime. And he says, isn't that better than just falling in the parking lot like that? So, so I was trying to explain to him. And what we say is, when there is a chance of getting moksha, is an observation, and my Guruji teaches this. When you're on the path for moksha, Bhagavan actually gives you the chance of erasing your karmas, like your good or bad karmas, right away, so you don't carry them forward to the next births. So he and I keep discussing it, he keeps bringing them up. So and like Charvakas, what if he's born as a cockroach next janma? At least this janma he's enjoying it.
Right.
So sorry, I don't know why I brought that up, but it's about the result that would come to us either immediately, so which is what we call as a drishta phala, or the result that will come at a later time, which is the adrishta phala. And both are extremely important in how all of our agami karmas, our sanchita karmas, and all of those come into picture. And all of those sanchitas take put together is how the next janma is going to be.
Okay. Sriji? So, can I ask you one more question? So,
Sure.
So you're saying the free will, if it's strong enough, along with other like meditation or puja, whatever you do, can sometimes overcome your karma, like from the previous life or whatever karma or whatever it meant to be in this life.
They can overcome prarabdha.
Prarabdha karma, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Not the agamis and sanchitas and all of those other karmas. And there are other ways to do that. When Shankaracharya provides lots of practical steps on, and all the gurus actually do that, on how to get rid of sanchita karmas and how you will not gain more karmas by being like the akarta bhokta. You would not be accruing any more karmas, and how you can burn your sanchita karmas, and how you work on your prarabdha karmas with that self effort, and you're just facing the scenarios at that moment, like living in the moment is a term that we use, right? How somebody lives in the moment and the future doesn't bother them, nor the past.
Okay. So, in short, the differences you see in the world could be from their previous karma, right? Why one person is born certain way and the other one the different way.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shriji, thank you very much. That was very, very detailed and clear.
I appreciate it. There was a lot of digression. Apologies. Sometimes I go into my personal life and share some stories with the hope that somebody will learn from my mistakes.
Sriji, did you say that the Agamika cannot be changed?
The Agami can be changed by your free will as of today. That's what we were talking about, right? Like based on the past, your present is being decided. Based on what you do in the present, your future can be decided.
Prayers,
So
pujas, you cannot. That's what you said. I thought that's what I heard.
no. I said with your self effort and along with adding chanting, like adding your pujas and everything else, your Agami can be modified.
Modified, yes. And the prayer also can be modified, not the Sanchita.
The Sanchita is already in the bag.
And you.
Sorry, Satiji, you're breaking up. I don't know if it's on my end. I'm not unable to hear you. Am I only the one facing that issue?
No, we're all hearing same.
Okay. You may have to try again, Satiji. Okay, looks like we lost her. We'll wait for her to come back, and while that's happening, we'll move to Shloka 23, unless there are other thoughts anybody wants to discuss.
I just want to add that I have had the same experience as well as my son to be punished several times right away, and I think it's better to have that than future is how I had thought, and you clarified that, and thank you so much.
Yeah, and there is a whole rationale behind why that's happening, and if it's happening a lot of times, and if you are observing that, then you absolutely know that Bhagavan is trying to take you on a path that very few people walk, and the whole life goes in sadhana at that time.
Sriji.
Namaste, Gayatri
Hello.
ji.
Namaste, Sriji. I just have a question actually. While growing up, I used to ask my mom about this karma thing, and isn't it better to get punished right away rather than carrying it to the next janma? So I always think because many people I see, they are so innocent and they live very nicely, but they get punished by losing their kids or something. Some tragic events happens in their life. I always think, isn't it better to get punished right away than carrying it over?
And depends on again how much of drishta and the adrishta phala that somebody is accruing, right? Anything drishta, you would get it right away. And think about it, and this is not given in any text, it's just my observation. Think of an action, and there are 100 points for that action. If the phala that is accrued, is in front of the person right away, is about, say, 10%. The other 90% is going into Sanchita to be accrued at a much later time.
Okay.
And it is also not just our own karmas, right? The law of karma is so complex, it is just mind blowing. It is also the karmas of that person's son. For example, somebody loses a child.
Mm-hmm.
It's the child's karma as well. And if that person has completed his karmas and has erased for whatever this janma is, and is just took birth to for those many years to complete their course of action, and they're done with it, and they're leaving, that leaves a pain, a grief in the parent's life, but that person is relieved.
Okay.
But we want to hang on to them because there is an attachment. Again, goes back to the raga, shoka, moha, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's our own, and even in the previous lessons, we talked about something else outside of you cannot give you grief, whether it is sorrow or happiness. It has to be done, it has to be innately formed. But because of attachment to certain things that are not permanent, we create that grief for ourselves. There are actions to be done. Like, for example, my mother passed away. And there is grief that I don't know how many times I think of her, that I won't be able to speak to her. And there are so many things I would like to share and ask her questions. I don't have a chance to do that. But either I can do something more positive about the thoughts that she has shared with me or whatever she has taught me, or I can sit and grieve. But I know that she has to go at some point.
I know, because I understand like old age and other things, but when they die young, or even like your son, as your son said, corrupt corruptive people, they enjoy life more than anyone else, like the who are really, what do you say, straightforward and
Yeah.
so that always makes me wonder why this is happening.
Yeah. And my Guruji used to say that if you think luxuries are giving them sukha, and I'm talking about a real sannyasi who doesn't
Yeah,
see it that way.
right.
But when we ask him the question, he would say, if you think luxuries are sukha, it is just, he is reaping the benefits of some positive karmas in the past. But today's prarabdha is making it worse and will be accruing a lot of bad karmas for future. And whether a lot of bad things could happen in this year on, the person that we are specifically talking about, and the example that my son was talking about, that person was in jail and he is still doing a lot of these corruptive activities. And all of this will accrue over a period of time until a point, and I'm assuming like all the Telugu people know who I'm talking about. The person's father wanted like this 5 of the 7 hills from Tirumala,
Hmm.
and that person died like right on the Tirumala hills
Yes.
in a helicopter crash. So
Mhm.
things happen, right? Things
Right.
will take some
Yeah.
course, but they will absolutely happen. And it's not something to be scared of. It's something to be mindful of, because the whole universe is created as a wheel, a circle of life. It's about how we are adapting into that, the Brahma Yajnam that is happening, whether we align and sync with that circle of life, or we try to stay, not deviate course and be lost in the world, in the universe, like an astronaut cut off from his spaceship.
Thank you, Guruji.
With that, we'll move into Shloka 23. Who would like to chant this one?
May I read it? She.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Try the Shloka too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pranati.
Nainam chintanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, na chainam kledayantyapo, na sosya, na sosayati maruta.
Okay, we'll do one round of me chanting first, and you can follow right after. Where you see the 2 dots at the end, or in English, if you're reading in English, pavakaha with the H with a dot at the bottom, that has to be pronounced. Otherwise, if you do a dirgham with it, you're making it a feminine gender, versus marutaha, for example, Vayu is a masculine god, and pavakaha, the water, the Varuna, he is also masculine god. But if you call him Pavaka, it becomes the feminine version of him. So we'll chant together. Nainam chindanti shastrani,
Nainam chintanti shastrani,
nainam dahati pavakaha,
nainam dahati pavakaha,
न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापः
न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापः
न शोषयति मारुतः
न शोष्यति
न शोषयति
न शोषयति मारुतः
awesome
shastrani weapons enam this slash the self na chintanti do not cut pavakaha fire enam this na dahati does not burn apaha waters enam this na kledayanti do not wet marutaha cha and the wind na soshati does not dry. Weapons do not cut this self, nor does fire burn it. Water does not wet or drown it, and wind does not dry it. In verse 16 and again in verse 20, Krishna said that for the self, which is real, Sat, there is no absence. It is not subject to negotiation in any of the three periods of time. Abaditam Satyam. This statement cannot be shaken because that which is not subjected to negotiation cannot be negated, and truth, Satya, is not subject to negotiation. You yourself are this truth. If you have any doubt, try to negate yourself. The very person doing the negotiation or the negation is the one you are trying to negate. You find, therefore, that it is impossible to negate yourself. Anything that is negatable is not Satya. Therefore, the one who goes on negating is Satya, the only one who cannot be negated. Everything else is subject to dismissal. That which is not subject to negation can only be the Atma, the self. Thus, there is no absence, abhava, for the Atma. Only that which is subject to time can be a Sat. That which is not subject to time is Sat. Sat cannot be dismissed because dismissal implies prior existence and posterior non-existence, both of which are in terms of time alone, past, present, and future. That which is not subject to time and for which time itself is a dismissible object is called Satya / Atma. This then is Krishna's constant refrain. Just as one gives up old clothes and takes on new ones, the one who dwells in this body, Deha, gives it up and assumes another. Neither the Jiva nor Atma is subject to negotiation, the Jiva and Atma being one and the same. What can be negated, however,
here
is the notion that I am limited, the Jivatva. The essence or Swarupa of the Jiva cannot be negated. Only the notion that I am a Jiva can be negated. The same point was also made by Krishna in another form when he said that the Atma is not an object for any act of destruction. Na ayam hanti na hanyeti. Gita 2:19. Chapter 2, Sloka 19. It is neither the performer of an action nor the object of anyone's action. In other words, the Atma is not subject to negotiation because it's not subject to negation because it's not subject to destruction. No action can destroy it.
okay we'll pause here and we'll talk about what they're talking about. What is the negation that's being talked about here? Would anybody like to explain what's going on this in this paragraph? So focus on this one. Anything that is negatable is not Satya. So what are we negating here? So we are trying to understand the question, who am I really? And in this one, we negate and say, okay, this Annamaya Kosha, or this body, the external body, is not me. This Pranamaya Kosha, that is also not me, because even that is going to die. What is the real Satya? That is me. And in this, We are negating all the different layers, everything from the body. And what's left, the one that is negating, one that is doing the negation, that is the Atma, and that is the only truth. And that truth is me, my real self. And there is one more confusing statement here. Neither the Jiva nor Atma is subject to negation, and the Jiva and the Atma being one and the same. So here again, note what Jiva means. Jiva is the Atman that is enclosed, or is the kind of difference that we were talking about, where the Deha and the Dehi. Here, the meaning is Jiva, the Jivatma is somebody who is embodied in this body. And if the body is not, it doesn't exist, then the merger is simply that the Atman is mixing or merging with the other Paramatman, which is everywhere. I don't know if I made any sense with that. Think about it like the pot space and the massive, like the space around it. If the pot is broken, there is no movement of the space, has to walk towards some other space that's outside. But the merger happens very as simply as when the pot is broken, the space, there is no pot space anymore. So that there are two concepts. One is of negation, and one is how do you differentiate what is the swarupa of the jiva. That the jiva, the jiva atman cannot be negated, but the notion that I am a jiva, that can be negated. Did that make sense?
To negate I'm a jiva.
Sorry, what was that, Anita ji?
How can you negate I'm a jiva?
Depending on what your definition of jiva is when you're asking that question.
Okay. So if it's jivatma, then it's not
Negatable.
Yes. Okay.
Satiji, sorry, we could not hear your last statement. Would you like to try one more time?
No, sorry. I don't. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you better.
Yeah. No, what I was trying to say was your hairline fracture was the Prarabdha karma, and your real fracture was the Agamiga karma.
Yes, my self-effort. Exactly the same bone. I literally had to just walk back into the emergency. Any final thoughts before we conclude for the week?
I just wanted to bring up something historic in this juncture, that shloka, Vasamsi Jirnani, was read on All India Radio by Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, our then president, when Shri Jawaharlal Nehru passed away. This as soon as you read that, that whole memory came back to me, that him coming on the radio and announcing to the nation that Shri Nehru passed away, and then he just broke into this sloka.
Oh, nice.
Actually, this is the same sloka that I chanted for our friends' prayer meet last week.
Yeah.
The sloka I chanted and explained the meaning.
Yeah.
Actually, we chanted the whole of, not whole, most of the second chapter. Thanks to you, Sriji, we were all able to pronounce it properly.
All Bhagwan's will.
Thank you.
Chapter 2 is a very important consolation for a family that is grieving. Right. It's nothing to do with, it's not a chant for the furthering the journey of the person who left. It's more about consolation for the family that's left behind.
Right. It actually helped her a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. She slept well that day, she said. Yeah.
Very nice.
Sriji, I was going to say in the similar lines as Adi was telling us now.
Yeah.
So there were so many questions past few weeks
Yeah.
that were answered today because of this class, and now the hard part is remembering all these
Yeah.
when we face again. That's what I'm thinking. Thank you so much, Sriji.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the bandhas too, like it happens on, and sometimes I wonder, like what is that relationship that I have with this person, and why do I feel this way, like the grief or the pain that I feel for a certain person that is not even related to me. And in that situation of doing the prayer, like all of you have done the prayers, and you would wonder, like where are we born, where are we connected, in what country are we living, and suddenly like we are here doing this prayer for this person and for that family.
Yes, Sriji.
Okay, with that thought, we'll conclude for the week. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु सर्वं श्रीमन्नारायण चरणारविन्दार्पणमस्तु. Thank you so much for your time. I'll catch up next
Thank
week.
you so much. Ruchi.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sriji.
Sriji.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.